common tongue, it says, one ring to rule them all. One ring to find them. One ring to bring them all. And in the darkness, find them.
Or in this case, one ruby. The Phantom Ruby, a vital MacGuffin that's not only integral to the plot of Sonic Mania, but connects the game with Sonic Forces. It feels like only yesterday that we were all speculating if the ruby was the same gem on Infinite's chest. In fact, several YouTubers posted videos claiming that Mania was the prequel to Forces, but nothing was for certain until we heard this sound effect. That's when everything became clear. Ever since then, the theories on Mania and Forces have been endless. Even Sega recently came out and confirmed that the two games are connected. So the cat's out of the bag. And thank goodness for the fact that everyone is calling the Phantom Ruby correctly now, instead of saying it's a Time Stone or Infinite Gem. Since the mysterious Infinite's reveal back in E3, there have been countless theories regarding the new villain, whose edginess gives Shadow a run for his money. From saying Infinite is Tails from another timeline, to saying he's Mephiles returned, to saying he's one of the custom characters and has a connection with your avatar, the theories have been quite bizarre and creative. But thankfully, this video will not be about Infinite, as I feel like that would not only be cliche at this point, but totally miss the crux of the mysterious gem itself. Despite all the videos, nobody has attempted to solve why the Phantom Ruby ended up hundreds of feet inside Angel Island. What was it even doing there? And how come Knuckles didn't know about it in the past? We had an entire game that took place in Angel Island called Sonic 3 and Knuckles, yet no Phantom Ruby was ever mentioned or discovered. This cannot be coincidence, just like Mania connecting with Forces isn't a coincidence. Everything happens for a reason, and it's made obvious when Sonic and Tails run into the egg robos in Angel Island as they're digging up the Phantom Ruby, only to get transported back to Green Hill. Many S3 and K fans like myself were kinda disappointed that we didn't get to play Angel Island Zone, which in my opinion is way more exciting than Green Hill Zone. But this was done intentionally by Sega as a plot device, to show that there's a story behind why the covetous Phantom Ruby is in Angel Island and not some other location. So, are you ready to uncover the truth? I'm GamerGuy7Aces, and this may be the biggest theory I've done yet, as I have spent months extensively researching Sonic history, lore, and other theories to figure out the true origins, or the untold story, of the Phantom Ruby. So without further ado, let's begin. It's been over a year since Sonic Forces was first introduced to the world as Project Sonic 2017, and even though I've been very critical of this game, the one thing I have continuously been hyped for is the story, as Forces boasts a meatier story than we've ever gotten for a Sonic game since the Black Knight in 2009. A year ago, I made a theory speculating the plot of Forces, about the possibility of Sonic being stuck in a time loop paradox. If you haven't watched that yet, I strongly advise you do before watching this video. But I just want to get this out of the way since I'm sure many of you who have watched that theory will be wondering if I will be discussing about it. Although you may think that my speculation last year on Forces is outdated, I was definitely onto something. I even showed a little animation of classic and modern Sonic facing some previous villains of his past, namely Ifrit and Iblis. And lo and behold, we find out 9 months later that Sonic will be facing all of his previous villains, Shadow, Chaos Zero, Zavik, and Metal Sonic. Coincidence? I think not. And since Infinite can bend and shape the fabric of reality, that is congruent with Sonic going through a time loop. A time loop doesn't behave the same way as time travel. It's basically your reality repeating in the same fashion. The only way out of a time loop is by acquiring knowledge and using retained memories to progress and eventually exit the loop. The time loop is then a problem-solving process, and the narrative becomes akin to an interactive puzzle. Anyway, I won't delve too much into that since I've already covered that topic. But since then, I've been figuring out the story of Sonic Forces and have made several speculation vids, which I've been quite accurate on thus far. But it's time to take a step back from Sonic Forces and go back to the beginning, to Sonic Mania, or even further back. Who created the Phantom Ruby and how did it come to be? Well, it's time to go back 4,000 years ago and learn about the ancient Babylonians and the Echidnas once again. Remember my theory last year where I discussed about the Babylonians being ancient astronauts to Angel Island? Well, looks like I've only scratched the surface of the bigger picture. And it's shocking how close I was in putting the pieces together, like an interactive puzzle as I mentioned earlier. Furthermore, many others have claimed Sonic Forces to be a spiritual successor to Sonic Chronicles, the Dark Brotherhood, at least from a canonical point of view, and I used to dismiss that notion. But now, it's starting to make more sense. As was discussed before, the Babylonians arrived to Angel Island circa 4,000 years before Sonic's time, and they came in peace to spread their knowledge with the Echidnas. There were two main clans of Echidnas, the Knuckles clan and the Nocturnus clan. The Knuckles clan was led by Chieftain Pachacamac, while the Nocturnus clan was led by Imperator Piroth Ix. The Knuckles clan were a fairly peaceful society, and being the dominant Echidna race, had been blessed with centuries of peace, until close to the end of its existence. The Nocturnus clan were the complete opposite. Being more technologically oriented than Knuckles' ancestors, the Nocturnus saw themselves as a superior tribe and sought for world domination as they engaged in a long and bloody warfare with the Knuckles clan. Utilizing advanced technology they learned from the Babylonians, archaeologists in Sonic's world refer to the ancient Nocturnus culture as the Fourth Great Civilization. This also caused great concern to the Babylonians as the Nocturnus tried again and again to capture the Chaos Emeralds. This is what caused the ancient Babylonians to help the Knuckles clan create the Master Emerald, which had the power to neutralize all 7 of the Chaos Emeralds. One Master Emerald to rule them all. Or so we thought. They also built the great stone pyramid cities and mystic ruins close to the shrine of the mysterious Chao and the Master Emerald, but there needed to be a guardian for the Master Emerald in order to protect it from the Nocturnus. So the first guardian of the Master Emerald was Chaos, a god of destruction who started off as a humble Chao himself. However, prolonged exposure to the Master Emerald mutated him into his familiar translucent, watery form. This frustrated Imperator Ix, as he and the Nocturnus clan were unable to retrieve the emeralds without massive difficulty. Therefore, the technophilic Imperator had to strengthen and advance his infantry in their war for conquest by creating Gizzards, ancient automata. The name Gizzard was a Nocturnus language which meant everything. These were basically artificial soldiers that were built to take control of Angel Island from Chieftain Pachacamac and rule the ancient world. Marching out of the factories within the Nocturne Citadel, the prototype Gizzards fought at the forefront of the Nocturnus armies and turned the tide of the war against Knuckles' ancestors. Gizzard's strength lay in their ability to flawlessly mimic their enemies' attacks and weapons, allowing them to become more skilled in combat with every vanquished opponent. Shortly after, Chieftain Pachacamac's wife died. No one knows for sure what happened, but I'm going to go with an educated guess that her death was caused by the Gizzards to hurt the clan's chieftain. Nevertheless, the death of his wife turned Pachacamac into a hard-hearted warmonger, and he made the desperate decision to steal the Master Emeralds, which he believed were not only the keys to the Knuckles clan's survival and victory, but to defeat the evil Imperator Ix and the Nocturnus clan for good. Well, we all know what happened afterwards. Despite Tico's intervention and pleas, her father ignored her as they assaulted the shrine and massacred the Chao, which angered the Guardian Chaos and caused him to obliterate the Knuckles clan. This event marked the end of the long war between the Nocturnus and the Knuckles clan. With their rival brethren wiped from the face of the earth, Imperator Ix saw it as a massive victory, and the Nocturnus clan nearly colonized the whole world, as attested by Shade in Chapter 6 of Sonic Chronicles. The technophilic clan enjoyed a free, albeit brief, reign over Sonic's world. Robotic research and development didn't stop during this time though, because the pinnacle of Gizzard's science in the ancient world came in the form of Emerald, a robot with the ability to absorb Chaos Emeralds. However, this wasn't enough to satisfy the ruthless Imperator, as he wanted to not only bind the emeralds, but to rule over all the gemstones. And with that, he and his clan forged the most powerful gem ever imaginable, a ruby. This amethyst wasn't any ordinary ruby, as it even possessed dominance over the Master Emerald. And into this ruby, the albino echidna poured his cruelty, his malice, and his will to dominate all life. One ruby to rule them all, one ruby to find them, one ruby to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. Whether or not Emerald would have been the first vessel to use the ruby like Infinite is unknown, but one by one, the free lands of Sonic's world fell to the power of the ruby. But there were some who resisted. By this time, the ancient Babylonians dispersed throughout the world and left Angel Island as they gave up on the Echidna race. But a few rogue Babylonians decided to take matters into their own hands and contacted a supernatural entity known as Argus to deal with the notorious Nocturnus clan. Being the peaceful alien race that they were, the Babylonians didn't want the Nocturnus to be exterminated like the Knuckles clan was, but sealed away. Thus, the Nocturnus and their evil Imperator Ix were exiled from Sonic's world and banished to a prison dimension called the Twilight Cage. But just before this happened, the Imperator foresaw these events and buried the ruby deep within Angel Island so that no one could find it until its rightful master came back, or someone worthy enough to wield its power. Now, the only inhabitants of Angel Island were the few survivors of the Knuckles clan that remained after Perfect Chaos attack, and they went into terminal decline over the ensuing centuries. The ruby was known by some of the echidnas who witnessed its tyrannical rule during Ix's conquest, but because no one knew where it was and had no proof of its existence, it became a phantom as the generations passed. Hence the name, the Phantom Ruby. Okay, so that's the origins of the Phantom Ruby. Now let's move forward to 4,000 years later in Sonic's time. During the events of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, there was no mention of this phantom. However, there was an iconic moment in the beginning of Sonic 3 that has caused several debates to this day. It's this opening cutscene. Now, in my third Sonic theory back in 2015, I stated two hypotheses on why Knuckles was able to knock Sonic out of his super form. Number one, because Knuckles had access to the Master Emerald, which neutralizes the Chaos Emeralds. And number two, Sonic was still inexperienced as he was still new at going supersonic. Looking back at those two hypotheses, the second one sounds a little right, but not completely accurate, nor does the first one, since the Master Emerald was located all the way in the shrine. And if that was the case, then Knuckles should have been able to easily defeat Sonic the second time they fought in Hidden Palace, right? Although it pains me to debunk a previous theory I did years ago, that's the whole point of theories, to continue researching and updating them. Otherwise, scientists wouldn't have come up with breakthrough discoveries about things we thought we knew about, like the prehistoric times and etc. So how did Knuckles knock Sonic out of his super form? The answer is the Phantom Ruby. That's right, it's located in the same area where Knuckles attacked Sonic, and that can't be coincidence at all. Being dormant for thousands of years, the Phantom Ruby must have been awakened by the sudden presence of a super form that was powered by the Chaos Emeralds. That triggered a reaction that made it easier for Knuckles to knock Sonic out of the form and lose the Emeralds. This is not even up for debate, since the Ruby does the same thing to Sonic after the final boss in Sonic Mania. After Super Sonic defeats both Eggman and Heavy King, the Phantom Ruby again knocks Sonic out of his super form and binds the Emeralds away from him and Dr. Eggman, causing a wormhole. The Ruby and the Emeralds just don't go together. Like attempting to place the same poles of two magnets together, they will repel away from each other. No matter what happens, the Ruby is a catalyst to the Emerald's undoing, almost as if the Ruby was a sentient entity in and of itself, ruling over all the gemstones. Speaking of Sonic Mania, Sonic in that story is the same Sonic from the original games. Some people assume that this is a Sonic from another dimension, but have completely misinterpreted what Eggman said in Forces. This is virtually the same Sonic as modern Sonic, but they both have different timelines. Ever since the events of Sonic Generations, when Classic Sonic went back to his timeline, events changed for Classic Sonic, so his future was never going to be the same as modern Sonic anymore. This is called a parallel universe, or the multiple universe theory. Classic Sonic had already went through the events of Sonic 1 to 3 and Knuckles, before meeting his future self in Generations. Once he returned back, everything from then on would be different, and that's where Mania comes into the picture, which takes place right after Generations. This is very similar to Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super, how Trunks unintentionally created a parallel timeline when he came back to save Goku. When Trunks returned back to the future, his timeline remained the same, and even in Dragon Ball Super, when Lord Beerus destroyed Zamasu in Goku's timeline, let's call this timeline number 1, it still didn't get rid of Zamasu in Trunks' timeline, which is timeline number 2. This isn't the first time Sega has copied from Dragon Ball, so I'm not surprised at all. And now that Classic Sonic has his own timeline for Modern Sonic, that's further excuse to make more Classic Sonic sequels after Mania. So now that we got that out of the way, how did the two Eggmans go back to their own timelines? Moreover, how did Classic Eggman learn about the Phantom Ruby? We won't know until it's revealed in Sonic Forces, except that Classic Eggman most likely isn't in the game. Somehow both Eggmans were able to escape the white space in Generations, and either they hopped in different dimensions and ended up in the Twilight Cage, where they met Imperator Ix of the Nocturnus clan, who told them about the Phantom Ruby, or modern Eggman helped Classic Eggman find out about it. Nevertheless, Classic Eggman had a new purpose for taking down Sonic, and this time he didn't need the Chaos Emeralds, Time Stones, or the Master Emerald. They all paled in comparison to the Phantom Ruby. It states in the prologue of the official Sonic Mania manual that Dr. Eggman discovered a sudden dimensional breach in the atmosphere and detected a unique wave signature emanating from Angel Island. The key words, dimensional breach, give it away too well. And this makes Dr. Eggman realize that it could be the source of unspeakable power, which is the Phantom Ruby. Between Sonic 3 and Knuckles and this game, Eggman didn't know about the Ruby at all before the events of Mania, which makes me come to the conclusion that he learned about this Ruby shortly after the events of Generations. He immediately dispatched his elite robot minions and called the hard-boiled heavies to retrieve it, promising them that it would grant them powers beyond imagination. Tails also picks up the strange energy reading far away. Though different from the Chaos Emeralds, the reading was remarkably powerful, so Tails convinces Sonic to join him and check it out. Also, it's important to note that the hard-boiled heavies themselves were just ordinary egg robos that were modified by the mysterious power of the Phantom Ruby to hold more firepower. The powers that the Ruby gave to the heavies were the phantom versions of themselves, as stated in Sonic Retro. So everything the Ruby grants to the user are phantoms, as it slowly corrupts you and makes you lust for more infinite power. Sort of like the One Ring in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. However, just like the One Ring, the Phantom Ruby knows who is worthy to wield its power, and Dr. Eggman was not worthy. At least Classic Eggman wasn't worthy enough for it. You can just tell how the writers left clues in the soundtrack titles for Sonic Mania. Just take a look at one of Dr. Eggman's boss themes. This is his theme, and yet it's called Ruby Delusions. What does that even mean? It symbolizes Dr. Eggman's delusions of controlling the Phantom Ruby and using it for his own evil intentions of megalomania. And that, my friends, is delusional thinking right there. For the Ruby chooses you to wield it, not the other way around. And it chose the Heavy King, who was transformed into the Phantom King in the Egg Reverie boss. This is not to be confused with the title for the final Eggman boss music called Ruby Illusions, as that just means the Phantom Ruby that Dr. Eggman used is causing illusions to appear for Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, which transports them to different sections where they have to briefly avoid attacks from the phantom versions of the hard-boiled heavies. So with that being said, what is the fate of the Phantom Ruby in Sonic Forces? I won't try to assume that which hasn't come out yet, but judging by how the Ruby granted phantom powers to the hard-boiled heavies, I'm sure that's what will happen to the villains who join Infinite in Forces. Also, none of them are mind-controlled, as many people seem to think. That would be such a typical thing to happen, plus the Ruby does not need to possess anyone to do its bidding. It's been shown in the story trailer for Sonic Forces that Dr. Eggman uses the Ruby to create Infinite, who seems like the perfect vessel for the mysterious gemstone. And after the reveal of episode Shadow, which is the prelude to Forces, Shadow willfully joins Infinite's team for personal reasons, as stated by Nakamura. This episodial DLC will also reveal the origins of Infinite, as well as explore Shadow's allegiance and the fate of Team Dark. Whether Infinite promised Shadow to see Maria again or whatever, I have a gut feeling that Shadow will be a double spy or triple spy, and mark my words, Shadow, Rouge, and Omega will have their own arc in that game. Who knows? After all, Omega did tell Shadow in Sonic 06 that he will be the one who will seal him in the future, according to prophecy. All of this might play into the Phantom Ruby saga, and what a saga it is, spanning 4,000 years of Sonic's world. So, with the power of the Phantom Ruby and Infinite wielding it, how can Sonic and the Resistance possibly stand a chance at defeating it? It's already been established that Chaos Emeralds are useless against the Ruby. So, is everyone doomed? Not quite. Enter the Wisps. I've said before that it's been stated by Sega that the Hyper Gohan energy of the Wisps are more powerful than the Chaos Emeralds, so that automatically makes them capable enough to match the power of the Phantom Ruby. In case you all didn't know, it is explained in Sonic Runners that some of the Wisps like Sonic's world so much that they decided to live there in harmony with the planet's residents. Even the Mother Wisp comes to Sonic's world on a regular basis to visit the Wisps living on the planet. So that would explain how Tails is able to weaponize the Wisp's Hyper Gohan energy in the form of Wispons and manufacture them for the Resistance. Besides Sonic, Tails is the most knowledgeable of the aliens. In conclusion, no matter what lies ahead for Sonic and his friends and forces, at the end of the day, the Resistance represents you joining the fight. You, the custom hero, aiding modern Sonic, classic Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and etc. In The Lord of the Rings, even though Frodo Baggins was the main character whose sole responsibility was to be the ring bearer and to destroy the ring in Mount Mordor, the real hero was his friend Samwise Gamgee. Sam proved himself to be Frodo's dependable companion and was the most loyal of the Fellowship of the Ring, whom also played a necessary role in protecting Frodo and destroying the One Ring. Sam is like the custom hero in Sonic Forces. You can even tell by the lyrics of Force's main theme, Fist Bump, that your avatar is the one who will help save the day.
I can't do this alone, even though I am strong. Need something more than me, someone to push me to victory. Let's see what we can do, together me and you. Can't be afraid to try, kiss your fears.
Indeed, as cheesy as that sounds, this is the most meaningful part of the entire story. Sonic isn't the one that'll save the day anymore. He needs you to carry on, to finally win. And in the end of all things, together, we can show the world what we can do.
We may yet, Mr. Frodo. We may. Sam. I'm glad you're with me.